Welcome to our channel, a space where possibility is not just a theory, but a way of life. Here we explore the extraordinary truths hidden in plain sight, the kind that transform ordinary days into miraculous wins. Today you're about to step into the remarkable world of Helene Hadsell, a woman who became known as the contest queen because she won every single contest she ever entered, over 5,000 times, not by luck, but by knowing exactly how to call her desires into reality. We're going to uncover her life-changing SPEC method: select, project, expect, collect. And you'll see why this isn't just about winning contests. It's about unlocking the kind of mindset that lets you manifest anything you truly want. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and get ready. Because the principles you're about to hear could change the way you live, decide, and dream for the rest of your life. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you never miss these powerful teachings. And when this message resonates, share it with someone you love. Someone who's ready to remember that life was never meant to be left to chance. It was meant to be designed. They called her the contest queen. But Helene Hadsell was more than a woman who won prizes. She was living proof that reality bends for those who dare to decide exactly what they want and refuse to waver. Helene didn't stumble into luck. She didn't rely on superstition, lucky charms, or chance. What she discovered and lived was a formula so simple, so deceptively powerful that it changed her life forever. And when she shared it, it changed the lives of countless others. The first time she put it to the test, she had just finished reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. A single sentence lodged itself in her mind and refused to let go. You can have anything you want, provided you know what it is, and you can see yourself as having it. That night, she told her husband the truth she had just discovered. We can have anything we want. All we have to do is decide what it is. Her husband, half teasing, half serious, pointed to an ad for a Coca-Cola contest. The prize was an outboard motor. You had to write 25 words or less on why you'd take Coca-Cola on an outing. Helene sat in her chair, slipped into her husband's mind, imagining how he would think, what he would say, what he would feel if he already owned that motor. She didn't wonder if they would win, she knew. In her heart, it was already theirs. A week later, the phone rang. They had won. For Helene, this wasn't a cute coincidence. This was the beginning of a lifetime of conscious creation. Over the years, she would win over 5,000 contests. From trips around the world to a 4,300 square foot home. From furniture to appliances. From luxury items to cash prizes. But more important than the prizes themselves was the method she had refined, the method she called SPEC: select, project, expect, collect. Helene would tell her audiences with a twinkle in her eye, if you want to be a winner, you better SPEC it into being. And the beauty of it? It wasn't about contests at all. It was about understanding the way your mind, your energy, and the universe itself work together to deliver the life you decide to claim. The first step is to select. Sounds simple, and it is, but it's the step most people skip. You must choose what you want with clarity so sharp it cuts through every distraction, every doubt, every vague maybe someday wish. Helene compared it to ordering from a menu. You don't walk into a restaurant and say, "Bring me something." You don't let the waiter decide. You pick the exact meal, the sides, the preparation, maybe you even ask for extra sauce. And when you order, you know it's coming. Most people live their lives without ever placing the order. They speak in half-hearted wishes. It would be nice if, I hope someday, maybe I'll try. But the universe responds to specificity, to precision, to certainty. So when you select, you get detailed. You name the color, the shape, the size, the location. You don't leave it fuzzy. because a fuzzy image produces fuzzy results. Helene advised beginners to start with small, believable desires, something your mind can easily accept as possible. A free coffee, a parking space, a kind message from a friend. These quick wins are proof to yourself that you can consciously create. Once the belief takes root, the so-called big things become just as easy. And this leads naturally into the second step: project. Once you've selected your desire, you project it into your reality through the twin powers of imagination and emotion. For Helene, this meant stepping into the scene as though it were already unfolding. Not thinking about the future moment when she might have the thing, but living inside the present moment of already having it. When she wanted to win a trip, she would imagine packing her bags, hearing the zipper close, smelling the scent of new clothes folded neatly inside. She would feel the anticipation in her chest, see herself boarding the plane, taste the meal she'd have upon arrival. It was never someday, it was now. This is where so many get it wrong. They visualize their dream as a distant goal, always just out of reach. But projection is about collapsing the distance between you and your desire. You see it as yours in the now until your mind accepts it as fact. And here's the secret Helene embodied without even realizing it first. When your mind accepts something as fact, the world rearranges itself to match. She didn't bother with thoughts of competition or whether there were thousands of other entries. In her inner world, there was no contest to win. There was only the knowing that it was hers. That level of conviction is magnetic, but conviction doesn't happen by accident. It grows from the third step: expect. Expectation is faith in motion. It's the quiet, unshakable knowing that what you've selected and projected is already making its way into your life. Helene would remind people, you expect a meal after you order it in a restaurant. You don't sit there wondering if they'll bring it or if the chef will change his mind. You know it's coming. And while you wait, you enjoy the conversation, the company, the moment, because the arrival is certain. That's the energy she brought to her manifestations. No desperate checking, no obsessive doubting, just the calm certainty that it was done. Norman Vincent Peale wrote, "Expect the best, and your mind will be free of self-doubt, allowing you to put your whole self into your endeavor, and nothing can stand in the way of a person whose heart is fully in it." Expectation is wholeheartedness. It's when your desire stops being a fragile wish and becomes the natural next step of your life. People are often defeated not by lack of talent, but by lack of this wholehearted expectation. They don't commit, they hedge their bets. They prepare for disappointment, and in doing so, they rehearse it into reality. Helene refused to do that. She expected to win, always. And when the prize didn't arrive on her timetable, she didn't waver. She simply decided it was on its way and kept living in the joy of already having it. Because when you live this way, the final step is inevitable: collect. To collect is to receive what you've called in. It's the moment the physical world catches up to the reality you've already been living inside your mind. For Helene, this was never a surprise. It was the natural conclusion. She would say, there is no failure, only a delay in results. The only real question was whether you could hold your expectation long enough for the collection to occur. Over and over, she proved that you could. The SPEC method wasn't just a catchy acronym, it was a lived practice, a way of moving through the world that erased the gap between thought and thing, between dream and day. And the truth is, you have the same power. You always have. Every thought you dwell on, every image you rehearse, every belief you hold is a projection you're sending into the universe, and the universe is answering. The only difference between someone who lives a life by design and someone who lives by default is choice. The choice to spec your reality instead of leaving it to chance. So what will you select? What will you project into your now? What will you expect without hesitation? And collect without surprise? Because the moment you decide, the process begins. The first thing Helene understood, long before she knew the science behind it, was that energy always precedes form. Before a prize arrived in the mail, before her name was announced as a winner, before the applause, the handshakes, the camera flashes, she'd already received it in her mind. And this is where many people misunderstand the law of attraction. They think it begins when they take action, when they enter the contest, when they post the vision board, when they say the affirmation. But in truth, manifestation begins the moment you become it inside. Helene didn't just picture winning. She became the woman who wins. She spoke like her, walked like her, thought like her. She lived in a state where victory was not an event, it was an identity. Because here's the secret. When you make your desire a part of your identity, you no longer chase it, you embody it. And when you embody something, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. This is why Helene never entertained the possibility of losing. It wasn't arrogance, it was alignment. In her reality, it was already done, and reality has to match your inner world sooner or later. We live in a universe that responds to vibration, not just words. And the vibration of certainty is unlike anything else. It doesn't grasp, it doesn't beg, it doesn't panic. It rests. Think about the last time you knew something was going to happen. Not hoped, not wished, knew. Maybe it was meeting someone you were certain you'd see again, or the sun rising tomorrow. You didn't need to force the belief. You didn't need to repeat it 1,000 times. You simply knew. That's the energy Helene carried into every SPEC cycle. Select with clarity, project with embodiment, expect with certainty, and then, without strain, collect with gratitude. Helene had a gift for not getting tangled in the how. When she wanted something, she didn't mentally construct 1,000 scenarios about how it could possibly arrive. She understood, whether consciously or intuitively, that the how belonged to the universal intelligence that orchestrates everything. When she entered a contest, she didn't think about the judges, the number of entries, the odds. She didn't study statistics. She placed the order in her mind and trusted the delivery system of the universe completely. This is where so many people block themselves. They choose the desire, but then chain it down with limitations. I'll get the job if the economy improves. I'll find love if I meet someone at work. I'll make money if this one deal comes through. When you attach your desire to a single path, you cut off infinite other ways it could reach you. Helene didn't do that. She left the door wide open for miracles to take the shortest route possible. Helene often said that belief gets stronger with proof. This is why she recommended starting small. When you spec a parking spot into existence, when you spec a free coffee or a chance encounter, your mind starts to loosen its grip on doubt. It begins to realize that maybe, just maybe, you're the one holding the pen in this story. Each win became a new layer of proof for her. The more she won, the easier it became to win again, because every success reinforced her identity as the woman who wins. The world will call it momentum, but in truth, it's simply alignment becoming automatic. This is perhaps the most magnetic part of Helene's energy. She didn't wait for the prize to feel joy. She brought the joy into the present. When she projected her desire, she also projected the emotion of already having it. She would laugh, celebrate, tell her friends in her imagination. And this joy wasn't fake, it was felt. The body doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined reality and a physical one. This is the loophole in the so-called law of time. If you can feel it now, you've already bypassed the waiting. You've stepped into the parallel version of you who has it, and reality begins to sync with that version. If SPEC is so simple, why don't more people use it successfully? Helene would say it's because they give up too soon, or they never truly believe. They select half-heartedly, choosing something they don't really expect to get. They project lazily, imagining for a few seconds and then slipping back into doubt. They expect with hesitation, constantly checking if it's working. And when nothing arrives immediately, they declare it doesn't work and move on. But SPEC is not a negotiation. It's not a try it and see technique. It's a decision followed by unwavering alignment. Although Helene frames SPEC in practical, accessible terms, there's a spiritual backbone to it. When you select, you activate intention, the divine spark of creation. When you project, you engage imagination, the creative faculty Neville Goddard called God in action. When you expect, you embody faith, the invisible bridge between thought and thing. When you collect, you receive with gratitude, completing the energetic circuit so you can create again. In this sense, SPEC isn't just a manifestation formula, it's a spiritual practice. It's training your mind, heart, and spirit to operate in harmony with the laws of the universe. One of the most overlooked aspects of Helene's life was how her wins inspired others. When she shared her stories, people around her began to win too. Why? Because belief is contagious. When you witness someone consistently creating results that defy the odds, something shifts inside you. Your mind starts to whisper, if they can, maybe I can too. And this is perhaps Helene's greatest gift. Not the prizes she collected, but the belief she instilled in others. She showed that this ability isn't reserved for a chosen few. It's not dependent on luck, talent, education, or background. It's available to anyone willing to SPEC with conviction. So, here you are, hearing her story, feeling the spark she passed down, and maybe, just maybe, realizing that you've been holding this power all along. The question is no longer, does SPEC work? The question is, will you dare to live it? Because once you do, the line between possible and impossible disappears, and life becomes one long, beautiful game of select, project, expect, collect. Most people treat manifestation like a special event, something they pull out only when they desperately want something. They treat it like a birthday wish, rare, fragile, and full of uncertainty. Helene didn't live that way. For her, SPEC wasn't an occasional ritual. It was the rhythm of her life. She didn't just select when there was a contest. She was always deciding what she wanted next. She didn't just project when she had free time. She was always playing in her imagination, weaving vivid pictures of her desires into her daily thoughts. She didn't just expect when she felt positive. She carried expectation like a constant hum in the background, a gentle but unshakable knowing. And she didn't just collect the big wins. She collected every small sign, every nudge from the universe with gratitude and delight. This is how SPEC becomes second nature, by making it a lifestyle, not an emergency measure. Every day, Helene was placing orders with the universe, not in a greedy way, but in a creative way. To her, life was a catalog, and she had the right to choose from it at will. She taught that the moment you decide what you want, you set the creative process in motion. It doesn't matter if it's a pair of shoes, a trip abroad, or a complete change in your life path. Clarity activates creation. She encouraged people to write down their selections, not because the universe needs a written note, but because you do. Writing crystallizes thought. It forces you to be specific. And once the selection is made, the universe starts moving the pieces into place, whether you see them or not. Projection doesn't have to be a heavy, serious meditation session. Helene turned it into a game she played all the time. Waiting in line, she'd imagine walking through the door of her next vacation villa. Doing laundry, she'd picture unpacking souvenirs from her latest win. Cooking dinner, she'd imagine telling the story of her latest prize to a group of laughing friends. By doing this, she wasn't trying to manifest. She was living in the vibration of already having what she wanted. And when you live in that vibration, life starts handing you matching experiences as effortlessly as an echo returning your call. Here's where many people sabotage themselves. They plant the seed of their desire and then dig it up every day to check if it's growing. Helene didn't do that. She expected the result with the same calm certainty you expect the sun to rise. She didn't stand in the field and shout at the soil. She planted, watered, and went about her day, knowing the growth was happening beneath the surface. Expectation without interference is an art. It requires trust. It requires letting go of the timeline. It requires releasing the belief that it's not here yet. Because the truth is, if you fully aligned with it, it is here, waiting to meet you in physical form. Helene celebrated every manifestation, not just the big ones. If she found a penny on the sidewalk, she collected it with a smile. If a friend unexpectedly treated her to lunch, she received it as if it were a grand prize. This constant celebration kept her vibration high. It told the universe, "I notice every gift. I appreciate every delivery." And appreciation speeds the next delivery. This is why gratitude is more than a moral virtue. It's a magnetic force. Gratitude signals to the universe that you're ready for more. The hardest part for most people isn't knowing what they want, it's believing they can have it. Doubt is the quiet thief that sneaks in and rewrites your expectation. Helene had no room for doubt. When it whispered, she drowned it out with proof. She reminded herself of every win, every time SPEC had worked. She surrounded herself with stories of success, hers and others. If you want to live SPEC as a lifestyle, you have to treat doubt like an uninvited guest. You don't feed it, you don't entertain it, you show it the door. One of her favorite ways to do this was to replace "what if it doesn't happen" with "what if it does?" And she would linger in that thought, savoring the possibility until it became a certainty. SPEC works best when your subconscious mind becomes your partner in creation. Helene knew that the subconscious doesn't respond to begging or pleading. It responds to repetition and vivid imagery. Every time she projected her desire, she was training her subconscious to accept it as truth. And once the subconscious accepts something, it begins to filter reality in a way that brings it to you faster. This is why you may start noticing opportunities, people, and resources you previously overlooked. They were always there, but your mind was tuned to a different frequency. SPEC changes the station. For Helene, contests were a playground. They were a visible, tangible way to prove to herself and others that thought becomes reality. But as she grew older, she realized contests were just a metaphor for life itself. Life is one ongoing contest. The entry form is your thought. The judging panel is your vibration. The prize is whatever you've dared to select, project, expect, and collect. Once you understand this, you stop waiting for luck. You start living like a master contestant, one who knows every round is already rigged in your favor when you align with it. There were times when Helene didn't get the prize immediately, but she didn't label it as failure, only as a delay in results. This subtle shift in language kept her in the game. She knew that the moment you declare something isn't working, you've withdrawn your entry. But if you hold the feeling, even when the prize takes longer, you remain in alignment, and the delivery becomes inevitable. She would often say, "It's on its way. I don't know how, and I don't care how, but it's mine." Helene loved teaching SPEC because it multiplied her joy. Every time she saw someone else win because they applied the method, her belief deepened even more. And this is something you can do too. When you start seeing results, share them, tell the story, not to boast, but to plant seeds of belief in others. Because the more people believe, the easier it becomes for you to believe even bigger. Belief is a collective current, and when you tap into it, your manifestations ride the wave with ease. So now, as you hear these words, you might realize that SPEC isn't something to try, it's something to become. It's not a tool in your pocket, it's a lens for your entire life. And when you live this way, the universe doesn't just give you what you ask for, it surprises you with things you didn't even know you wanted, delivered in ways more magical than you could have planned. When Helene looked back on her life, she could see that SPEC had given her far more than prizes. It had given her proof that thoughts shape reality, proof that desire is a compass, not a whim, proof that the unseen world is as real as the chair you're sitting on, and that it's shaping the seen world every second. And as she aged, she began to see the deeper truth. SPEC was never just about contests, objects, or even experiences. It was about harmony, about becoming so attuned to the current of life that the gap between wanting and having disappears entirely. Helene knew that desire was not random. It wasn't greed. It wasn't daydreaming. It was communication. Every desire is a message from your deeper self, the part of you that already exists in every possible reality. When you feel that tug of wanting, it's your higher self saying, "Here, this is the next expression of who you really are." SPEC simply gives you the structure to receive that message and translate it into form. To select is to answer the call. To project is to step into the version of you that's already living it. To expect is to hold the line unwavering until the outer world catches up. And to collect is to honor the gift, not just for what it is, but for what it means. Evidence that you are heard, that you are seen, that you are powerful beyond measure. When Helene explained SPEC, she spoke in practical terms, but beneath those words was a constant awareness of energy. Every thought has a frequency. Every feeling has a tone. Every expectation has a weight. SPEC works because it aligns all three, thought, feeling, expectation, into a single broadcast. When you select, you sharpen the signal. When you project, you amplify it with emotion. When you expect, you lock it in. When you collect, you complete the circuit and release the energy back into the field, ready to call in the next creation. This isn't magic in the sense of breaking the laws of nature. It is nature, the deeper layer of it that most people never see. There comes a point when SPEC stops feeling like a process you do and starts feeling like the way you are. You no longer set aside time to manifest. You manifest as you breathe. Helene reached this point in her later years. If she saw something she liked, her mind would immediately move into SPEC without effort. I like that. Select. I see myself having it. Project. It's on its way. Expect. And then, without resistance, she'd receive it. Collect. This is where life becomes fluid, where you stop living in the constant tension of striving and start living in the ease of allowing. One of the most profound realizations Helene hinted at, though she rarely stated outright, was that time is not the barrier we think it is. When you project your desire as already here, you collapse the timeline between you and it. The so-called waiting period is just the time it takes for physical reality to rearrange itself in a way you can see. But energetically, the moment you align fully, it's done. That's why Helene could live in joy before the prize arrived. She understood it had already arrived in the only place that matters, her inner world. This is the paradox of manifestation. The faster you can feel complete without it, the faster it appears. Helene's wins didn't define her. She didn't attach her worth to the outcome. And this is a crucial part of why SPEC works so effortlessly for her. She wanted what she wanted, but she didn't need it to feel whole. Her joy came from playing the game, not from proving something to herself or the world. When you release attachment, you stop pushing your desire away with desperation. You hold it lightly, with the trust that it's yours without having to cling. And in that openness, the universe can deliver in ways you could never have scripted. In her later years, Helene began using SPEC for things far beyond contests. She applied it to health, relationships, spiritual growth. If she wanted peace in a situation, she selected peace. If she wanted reconciliation with someone, she projected the conversation, feeling the warmth of resolution in her heart. If she wanted deeper wisdom, she expected insights to arrive. And they did, through books, conversations, even dreams. She began to see that the same laws apply whether you're manifesting a house, a healing, or a moment of clarity. This is the ultimate expansion of SPEC, realizing that it's not about things at all. It's about shaping the entire texture of your life. By the time she passed, Helene had lived as if life itself was a friendly contest, always set up for her to win. Not in a selfish way, but in a collaborative way, where every win she had inspired others to believe in their own. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the real contest is not about collecting the most prizes, but about collecting the most moments where you remember who you really are. A creator, a chooser, a projector of worlds. And the prize? A life fully lived. One where you never sit on the sidelines, waiting for luck, but step into the arena knowing the game bends to your belief. Now, as you hear her story, you become part of the chain, Because the moment you understand SPEC, you can never unsee it. You start noticing the selections you make, intentionally or not. You start feeling the projections you send into the world, empowering or weakening. You start catching the expectations that color your reality, expansive or limiting. And you realize you've been playing this game your whole life. The only difference now is that you know the rules. Helene's message to you would be simple. You don't have to wait. You don't have to hope. You don't have to wonder if you're lucky. You already have the power. SPEC it into being. So here's the invitation. Right now, not later, select something. Anything. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be something you want. See it, feel it, step into the moment of already having it. Then, let the expectation settle into your bones, the calm knowing that it's done. And when it arrives, and it will, collect it with joy, gratitude, and the confidence to go again. Because this is your life, your contest, your creation, and you are already the winner. This is the legacy of Helene Hadsell. Not just the prizes, not just the stories, but the reminder that we are all contestants in the most beautiful game ever played, the game of creation. And now, you hold the winning ticket. If this message lit a spark in you, let it grow. And if you know someone whose light is ready to shine, share this with them. Because one story, one shift in belief, can change the entire course of a life. Here, we keep the flame alive, exploring the truths that remind you of your power and your place as the creator of your reality. So if you haven't already, subscribe now and step fully into this journey with us. And when you share this video, you're not just passing along words, you're passing along possibility. This is your time. Let's keep creating it together.